for Grandma's story time? I've got my story bag with me. It's my bag with purple circles and golden elephants and blue circles with golden elephants and red circles. And Peter lives inside. Come out, Peter. What have you got to say to us? Oh. Hello, everybody. You're very happy? What's happened to Winks? No, Winks is okay. Who's missing? Chinky's missing. Remember? His foot was tied to the chair and the wishing chair flew out the door and he was tied to it while it flew away. We don't know where it's gone. No, we don't. They're going to ask Mr. Spells, aren't they? But then what did Winks see? Winks saw a door that said, Mrs. Spells. Let's read the book. It's Enid Blyton, The Wishing Chair Again. What chapter are we up to, Peter? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay. Peter's going back in the bag so we can read the book and find out. Bye-bye. The Wishing Chair Again by Enid Blyton. Oh, put on your glasses, Grandma. The Wishing Chair Again by Enid Blyton. Chapter 19 is called Mr. Spell's Mother. The echo of Winks knocking at Mrs. Spell's door filled the underground passage and made the children jump. They turned around angrily. Winks, you shouldn't do that.
But I tell you, it says Mrs. Spells on this nameplate,
began Winks. Just then the door opened and a black cat stood politely there with a little apron around its tubby waist.
Meow. If you've brought the papers, please don't knock so loudly again,
said the cat, politely but crossly. We were in the middle of a spell, and you made my mistress upset half of it. Now, we've made a spell to make things small instead of big. It's most annoying. He slammed the door, almost hitting Winks's nose. The children came running up. Peter called out breathlessly, I say, I do believe that was old Cinders, Mr. Spell's cat. He had such enormous green eyes, like green traffic lights shining out.
Was it really? Said Mollie. Well, let's ask him if he is. Why? Mr. Spells might be here himself. It would save us quite a long journey. Dare we knock again? Said Peter. That cat was really very cross. I'm not afraid of a cross cat,
said Winks boldly, and he lifted the knocker and knocked again. He also found a bell and rang that too. Mr. Picklepie's door flew open and a cross voice called,
Who's making that row? Just wait till I get dressed and I'll come and chase you. That must have been Mr. Picklepie,
said Winks.
Bother, he's shut his door again. Now I shan't know what he's like.
Then Mrs. Spell's door flew open and the cat appeared again. but this time it behaved much more like a real cat. It spat at Winks and scratched him on the hand. It was just about to shut the door again when Peter called out, "I say, aren't you Cinders?" The cat stared at him.
Yes, I'm Cinders. Oh, I remember you. You're the boy who came with a girl to rescue Chinky, and I helped my master to do a spell to wake him up. What are you doing here, hammering at the door?
"Well, we were really on our way to see Mr. Spells," said Peter. But Winks here noticed the name Mrs. Spells on the door, and he knocked. He thought she, Mrs. Spells, might be some relation to Mr. Spells.
Meow, she is. She's his mother,
said Cinders.
I came here to help the old lady with a new spell. The one you spoiled by making her jump. My master is coming to call for me in a few minutes.
"Oh, is he?" said Peter joyfully. "Then do you think we might stay and see him? We do so badly want his help."
Well, meow, come in then, said the cat. I don't know about this brownie though. Winks, do you call him? Banging and ringing like that? You wait till Mr. Pigglepie is dressed and comes after him. He'll get a spanking. I don't want to stay out here in the passage,
said Winks.
I'll be very good and quiet and helpful if you let me come in. Who's standing gossiping at the door?
Suddenly called an annoyed voice.
Tell them either to go away or come in. Meow, you'd better come in and wait for Mr. Spells,
said Cinders. So they all trooped in and Cinders shut the door. Winks was quite glad to be out of the passage, away from a possibly furious Mr. Pigglepie. The cat led them to a remarkably big room with 3 windows. The children were so astonished to see what the windows looked out at that they quite forgot their manners for a moment. They didn't greet the bent old lady who sat in a chair in the middle of the room. One window, remember, they're underground. One window looked out over the sea. Yes, the sea, as blue as can be. Another one looked out on a sunny hillside. And the third looked out on an ordinary backyard where washing was blowing in the wind. Most extraordinary.
Well,
said a rather peevish voice.
Have the children of today no manners at all? Can't you even say, how do you do to an old lady?
Oh dear, said Mollie, ashamed of herself. Please, Mrs. Spells, I'm so sorry. Do forgive us. But it did seem so extraordinary, seeing those 3 windows like that, in an underground room, and one looking out to sea too. Why, I thought the sea was miles and miles away.
Things aren't always as they seem,
said Mrs. Spells.
What is miles away to you may be quite near for me. Now, what's all this noise about at my front door? When I was younger, I would have turned you all into pattering mice and given you to Cinders for making a noise of that sort in a respectable place like this.
Meow, madam,
said the cat, seeing the old lady was working herself up into a temper.
Madam, meow, these children know Mr. Spells, your son.
The old lady beamed at once.
Oh, do you know my son? Why didn't you tell me that at once? Cinders, some strawberry please, with strawberry ice and some strawberry biscuits.
This sounded exciting. And when it came, beautifully arranged on a large silver tray by Cinders, it was just as exciting as it sounded. It was a pink drink made of strawberry juice, and in it were pieces of ice shaped like strawberries, and the biscuits had tiny sugar strawberries in the middle. "This is lovely," said Peter. "Thank you very much." There came the sound of a key in the door.
Ah, my son, Mr. Spills.
Said Mrs. Spills.
Here he is.
And there he was again, just the same as before. Tall and commanding, dressed in a long cloak that shimmered like the water. He looked very surprised indeed to see the visitors.
"Why, I've seen you before.
He said to the children.
How are you? Quite well, I hope. And let me see. Have I seen this brownie before? Yes, I have. Aren't you the bad fellow that turned all your grandmother's pigs blue? Isn't your name Winks?
Yes, sir.
Said Winks.
Yes, Mr. Spills, sir.
Said Winks.
I hope you got spanked for that.
Said Mr. Spills.
I had a terrible job turning the pigs back to their right colour again. I believe they've still got blue tails.
Winks wished the floor would open up and swallow him up, but it didn't. Mr. Spills turned to Peter.
Well, have you come visiting my dear old mother?
He said. Peter explained how they were in his mother's room, and then he told the enchanter about poor Chinky and the chair.
Good gracious,
said Mr. Spills.
We must certainly find out where that chair has gone. If it falls into the hands of some rogue, he can use it for all kinds of wrong purposes. And Chinky too. What a silly thing to do, to tie his foot to the chair. Why didn't he tie the chair to the door handle, or something like that?
We didn't think of that, said Peter. Can you help us to find where the chair is? And Chinky too, Mr. Spills?
Of course.
Said Mr. Spills.
Now, let me think for a moment. This happened at night, you say, and the chair as usual flew up into the sky.
Yes, said everyone.
Well then, who was about that night in the sky who might possibly have seen the chair and Chinky?
Hoot the owl.
Said the old lady at once.
Quite right, Mother.
Said Mr. Spills.
Splendid idea. We'll call Hoot the Owl and see if he knows anything about this. He's a very wise and observant bird, you know.
He said, turning to the children.
He never misses anything that goes on at night.
Shall we go then and ask him if he knows anything? Said Mollie. Where does he live?
Oh, we'll get him here.
Said Mr. Spills. That's the easiest way. I'll go and call him. He went to the window that looked out on the sunny hillside. He clapped his hand 3 times and muttered a magic word so that Winks trembled in his shoes. And a very curious thing happened. The sunny hillside went dark as night, and behind the trees shone a little moon. It was all very peculiar, especially as the sun still shone in the backyard window and on the sea that could be seen from that window.
I must make it dark or the owl won't come.
Said Mr. Spills.
Now I'll call him.
He put his hands up to his mouth, placed his thumbs carefully together and blew gently. and to the children's delight and surprise, the hoot of an owl came from his closed hands. An answering hoot came from outside the window, and a dark shadow passed across the room. Then a big owl flew silently down and perched on Mr. Spill's shoulder. He caressed the big-eyed creature while Cinders looked on, rather jealously.
Hoot,
Said Mr. Spills.
listen carefully. 2 nights ago, a wishing chair flew off into the sky, and hanging from it by a rope tied to his foot was a pixie called Chinky. Did you see anything of this?
Answered the owl, hooting softly in Mr. Spill's ear.
Thank you, Hoot.
Said Mr. Spills, looking grave.
You may go.
The owl flew off silently. Mr. Spills waited a moment and then muttered a magic word. The moonlit hillside grew lighter and lighter, and hey presto, the sun was behind the trees now, and not the moon. Daylight was everywhere. What did the owl tell you? Asked Peter.
Oh, I forgot you couldn't understand.
Said Mr. Spills.
Well, he saw the chair, and Chinky too, dangling by his foot. He followed them out of curiosity, and he says they flew near the wandering castle, where giant Twisty lives, and the giant must have seen them and captured them. He saw no more of them after that.
This was very bad news indeed. Oh dear. Whatever are we going to do then? Said Peter at last. Poor little Chinky,
I must help you.
said Mr. Spills.
I can't let Twisty own that chair. Sit down. We must think of a plan.
That's the end of the chapter. Winks gets up to mischief, doesn't he, knocking on doors? But I'm glad he did. And it was good that Cinders recognised Mr. Spills, and now they know where Chinky and the wishing chair is. Mr. Spills is going to help them. They have to think of a plan. Come back tomorrow and we'll find out what the plan is. Bye-bye.